Welcome to the Awakened Pillow Talk podcast. My name is John Stringer.
And I'm Kathy Stringer. We're a married couple and business partners here to authentically share the practices and teachings that help us and others create aligned and fulfilled relationships.
Yep. Each episode's packed with the lessons, insights, joys, and challenges we experience in raising a blended family, managing various adventures, serving clients, and inspiring people around the world.
We'll also answer your best questions and feature riveting interviews on our monthly live stream.
So thanks for tuning in as we jump into today's discussion. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So good to have you joining us on our first live episode with a live audience. Woo-hoo! We're in an incredible studio, as you can see. If you're ever in Atlanta, we invite you to come to this wonderful spot called SLCA, Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. And we have some wonderful guests lined up. The esteemed leader of this wonderful center, Reverend Deborah Alexander. We also have the amazing Life Coach Ade joining us, Reverend RCA, otherwise known as Cynthia Alice Anderson, and incredible author Deborah Johnson, Reverend Deborah Johnson. So we are beyond excited to bring you a power pack.
So blessed.
Episode.
So blessed.
Yes. And Kathy's going to tell you a little bit more about what we'll be doing today.
So grateful to be here today. And one of the exciting things about being in a studio with a live studio audience is we are able to have a live band like all the other big talk shows, right? We're going to have a live band bring us in. So you probably know that John Stringer is an amazing singer, songwriter, musician who just brings through music that uplifts and inspires the world. So joining him tonight, we have Tony Belser on drums, who is a lifelong friend and such a respected musician. And we have SLCA's own Fuji, who's going to bring it in the pocket on bass. And what we want you to know is you are welcome here.
There is a space in my heart where I find the truth. I find me and you, a truth beyond what you may see now. But when we are one, we bring more good about. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah, there is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. And be who you are and let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. See when new eyes allow and unfold, embrace and let go. Trust the flow. There's a freedom in love when you follow your heart. Together we are stronger than we could ever be apart. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah, there is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love and welcome to peace. Welcome to our
welcome. You know what's amazing is John wrote that song for SLCA. So it's so beautiful that he's playing it here tonight. You know, a year ago today, we released The Power of Love and Black Lives Matter video. This was based on a spoken word piece that came through John in 2015. So at this time, a year ago, George Floyd had just been murdered, and it was just a time of complete helpless and hopelessness. And we really wanted to be able to offer love in some way, support in some way for the people that were suffering, including ourselves. So we were led to create a video around this spoken word piece. So we called our friend Sandy Hulan in Orlando, who's an amazing producer, and then we just started reaching out to amazing people all over the world, diverse people, powerful people, to ask them if they'd be willing to speak a line of the spoken word piece. We brought in a beautiful creative director, Shannon Croft, who put her vision on it, brought pictures in, edited it, and it was really powerful for us, and we're so grateful that it came together. So we would like to share it with you here. The Power of Love and Black Lives Matter.
What if sharing Black Lives Matter was a way to say I love you to the slaves that built this country but would never thank? Black Lives Matter.
What if it were a way to say thank you to those that gave their lives?
To bring equality in human relationships, in civil rights, in education, in economic opportunity. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
What if simply acknowledging that Black Lives Matter was one way to show love?
To the Black ancestors and their descendants, the current generation,
and their descendants, the current generation. Black Lives Matter.
A way to say thank you.
A way to say thank you for being the glorious children of God that you are and have always been. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
What if there were a simple way to support and encourage the descendants of those who were dehumanized, oppressed, demonized, lynched, and murdered? Just for being black.
And murdered.
Just for being
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
What if it were a way to show unity?
Acknowledging that Black lives deserve the same care and respect as all lives.
Care and respect as all lives?
Black lives matter.
What if it were a simple way to shift the collective consciousness of the world
by shining a light of love?
And value in something that has been systematically devalued, both consciously and unconsciously. Intentionally and unintentionally. Black Lives Matter.
What if it were a way to put ointment on a wound
that takes the collective love of humanity to heal? Black Lives Matter.
What if it was all of this and more, just by you choosing it to be?
In this moment, that's exactly what it means to me. Black lives matter.
Black Lives Matter.
What a powerful experience watching that is, but being a part of bringing everyone together to make their contributions was powerful. We had one incredible guest who has made her transition, who we love.
Yes, so we were so honored to have Dr. Barbara Lewis King be a part of this, and she transitioned soon after that. And, you know, she was is such a major part of our lives and really helped us find our way in many ways. So I just want to honor everyone for being a part of it, but definitely know that she is here with us. I feel her energy, and I'm just so grateful to everyone who said yes to be a part of this video.
Absolutely. The entire experience was also one of teaching us to listen to spirit and just answer the call. We had no idea what was going to unfold, and we loved what came about, and it took everyone coming together just to support and bring that message out. So we want to take that message and expand also on the topic of race and consciousness when it comes to creating aligned relationships.
Yes, and we are thrilled to have the amazing guest we have with us today to talk about that topic.
So our first guest today is someone dear to our hearts, a collaborator. She is a minister and an incredible podcaster. Check out her podcast, the amazing Reverend RCA, otherwise known as Cynthia Alice Anderson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Nice to be here.
Oh, so glad to have you. So glad to have you. We're going to dive right in because we know we want to make this in honor of your time, impeccable with our word.
Yes.
That's one of the 4 agreements we love doing. So, Kathy, why don't you ask the first question?
Yes, so first we want to thank you for saying yes to being in the Power of Love and Black Lives Matter video.
Yep.
And, my question for you is, it's been a year, and what have you seen shift and change in your life, your community, the world, since a year ago when we released that video?
Well, I see conversations happening that a little over a year ago would have never happened. I think there's discomfort, and I think discomfort means there's growth, and I think that's positive. I also think now there's even more fear in some ways, if I'm being completely honest, because when systems change, that brings up fear, but it doesn't mean it's not doable. It doesn't mean we should do it, because I've learned that dealing with fear is a part of life and a part of growth. It's a part of the soul curriculum. So I think how we deal with that fear is what is so important. So I think there is growth happening, culturally, societally, and I know in my family, lots of great conversations. So I think there's more of an openness to hear. But let me say this. I think there's also a radicalization that I've seen really be increased through the use of social media. So I have a lot of concerns about what's happening right now with the polarization of voices. But I think, as always, there are pockets of individuals that are waking up, that are seeking to be enlightened and want to live a better life that's more awake, more aware, more in tune, more dialed in. So I think in general, I see improvement, but it's going to take more work to ultimately heal.
Love it. And you mentioned something I think that was beautiful. One, fear arises, especially in times of growth, when we're going into new areas, new territory, expanding consciousness. And really, that's what this is about, race and consciousness, when it comes to what we call aligned relationships. Aligned relationships being those that are in harmony with the flow of love, with that essence, with that higher source or higher power. So with that, knowing that, what are some of the tools you are finding helping yourself and others when it comes to race and consciousness?
I think authenticity is always best. Honesty, authenticity, honoring each other, on the journey, because people are in all different places on this journey, and what I see really happening is a demonizing of any other. As much as we're trying to wake up, if people aren't exactly aligned with where we are, then we demonize them. And so, just cracking the door a little bit of that, creating a world that works for everybody, doesn't mean you have to be right where I am at this moment.
Right.
You know, and I know that when we can be our authentic selves, when we can, you know, approach life from living from the center of our being, then alignment, as you say, happens. But I think as long as we're trying to force people into a position or argue them into a position, I don't know if that works.
Understood. And are you seeing in your work specifically issues around race coming up and that you're dealing with and helping people shift through?
Yes.
What is that looking like?
Yes. You know, yes. I see people beginning to struggle with oppression that they didn't know was there. Now, how they couldn't see it, you know, I don't understand because of how and where I grew up. You know, I grew up in the Deep South in an all-black neighborhood. So I was very aware at a very young age of racism. You know, I grew up just outside of Atlanta, and you know, in Atlanta, racism was not hidden; it was absolutely right out there in the open. So that people are becoming more aware, I think, is hopeful.
Right.
It's hopeful. What I hope, though, again, is we can keep our hearts open just enough to see how each of us may be contributing to the problems we're seeing. Right. You know, people think it's somebody else's problem, and it's all of us working together to heal. Because even though as I said, I grew up in a black neighborhood. My dad's best friend was like a second dad to me, was black. Even all that, I grew up in the first integrated church in Georgia. We were friends with Coretta Scott King. You know, my grandfather sold land to blacks before anybody ever did. Even with that, culturally, societally, we pick up attitudes and beliefs, and they're very hidden. And so what I think is so hopeful is that what I call our shadow pieces, you know, those pieces that are not known to us, are surfacing. And what I know is that until the shadow surfaces, it cannot be healed.
Love that.
I think it's a very, very potent time for growth, for healing, for connection. And I think the authenticity has to be there. We can't pretend we know it all and, you know, we've got it all figured out. What's wrong with them? It's all of us.
Yeah.
And the conversations that are starting when you say you grew up here in Atlanta. I had a conversation with my mom recently who grew up in Atlanta, and there was like this idea that, well, I didn't really know what was going on. And it's like, but now you do. Now there is an opportunity to become aware and think in your life, what can I do differently now? Not walk around in guilt because of you didn't know, but what is the opportunity now?
It's a new day. Yes.
I was going to say, and I know some of the work you're doing, we're actually collaborating with retreats and different things. Is some of the work being provided there assisting in revealing some of those unconscious biases, some of those judgments that need healing?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I was saying to somebody the other day, you know, who was beating the drum of, you know, why is everybody doing this? I said, well, tell me what you're doing right now as a white woman who's all about equal rights. What are you doing day to day? And there was a long pause because I knew the answer was nothing. And so, and I say that with love, friends. We've got to have people that will tell us the truth and catch us in our own stuff. And so, yes, things are being illuminated. And, you know, in my life, I was thinking about this the other day. I didn't realize it. My dentist is black. My chiropractor is black. The organization I give my time and money to, which is Orlando Minority Youth Golf Association, the owner and its members are all minority. And so that work is my life. It's not like I'm trying to help somebody and do something so I can talk about it on Facebook. I'm doing it because I believe in my heart of hearts and my soul that we are equal. And until, basic everyday folks start changing behaviors, all the words in the world, are not going to get us anywhere. So in all of my work, you're going to see me collaborating with people of color. And somebody said to me on my podcast, which is now, in over 80 countries, 150,000 downloads, somebody said to me, I noticed all your guests at the beginning were black. And they said, why is that? I said, because I choose to.
Yeah.
Because I choose to. Because these are my friends, my colleagues. So it's just an honest living of what I say I'm about. And so all of the events that I do will have music from different cultures. It'll always be a diverse leadership because that's what the world is. That's the real. That's the real.
Love it, dear sister.
Thank
We want to
you
honor
so
your
much.
time. Thank you for being with us. Yes. And we're going to make sure to share, if you would just say it right now, your website with the listening audience.
Sure. So there's the website. That's my name, CynthiaAliceAnderson.com. There's my website for my podcast, experiencetothesoul.com. And those shows are all around the world, daily shows to support your soul experience. So thank you for having me. I bless you all. And thank you, Rev Deborah and Ade, for your presence and for your love. And I honor you both, too, for your sharing and for inviting me on. John and Kathy, bless you, love you. Take care. I'm sorry I have to leave the meeting.
Our pleasure.
We love you.
Take care.
We're now going to transition to broaden the conversation and introduce one of our wonderful guests who is here in the live studio audience with us right now. Well, please welcome to the stage
Reverend David Alexander, the esteemed spiritual leader of SLCA.
So glad you're with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just thanks for being here. Thanks for being in the house.
It's your house.
It's awesome to feel live music being played, and energy of people in the room. We're honored to have you here.
Grateful to be here. And we want to welcome another wonderful guest all the way from across the pond in the UK. Please welcome the amazing Life Coach Ade.
So great to have you, Ade.
Good to see you, brother.
Thank you for.
How you feeling over there, by the way?
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
So
I am grateful.
Thank you. And our last esteemed panelist is a amazing writer. One of my favorite books of hers, in fact, is called The Sacred Yes. She is a minister and just a force on this earth for consciousness. Please welcome the powerful Reverend Deborah Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here.
So glad to have you all. So we started off the conversation with our dear friend, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson, and I thought she brought up some really wonderful things. I want to expand on that conversation a little more by reading you something I think is very related and potent from one of the participants in the video, in fact, Dr. Beckwith, Michael Bernard Beckwith. So he talked about recently on his Instagram 3 conversations, and I just thought this nailed it for me. The first conversation I have when it comes to racism is with people of color. I teach them not to see themselves as victims and heal the wounds and the scar tissues within themselves, to come to a sense of empowerment and to go to deep levels of forgiveness so that they are not carrying the thought forms of resentment and hatred. This is deep work. It doesn't happen overnight. When you begin to heal, you start to see beyond your skin color and you realize that you are an internal being, a spiritual being, having this human incarnation. Now, I'm just going to stop there. I'm not even going to get into the next 2 yet. We'll get to that later. But I thought that'd be a good starting point, not only when it comes to having the conversation with people of color. I think it's easier when you're a person of color to have the conversation with people of color, right? But what I'm finding is the reality of what needs to happen is universal. There's a healing that needs to happen. And whether it's the wounds of racism, the wounds of resentment and hatred, the need to forgive, whatever, that process I think is universal. So let's start there if you don't mind. I'm going to start with my dear friend, Reverend Deborah Johnson. Just ask you a quick question. When you think of that topic, what comes up for you?
Well, I have to say that, I agree. I agree with my brother, my mentor, the Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. He nailed it. I tell people the exact same thing. See, we forget that our experience is not what happens to us. Our experience is how we name what has happened to us. That's our experience. It's a narrative. And this narrative is not just an expose, an analysis of the past. This narrative is in real time. In fact, it's even a script. It goes before us so that the events that happen of the day, we actually squeeze in to fit the narrative. So our narrative predetermines our experience before things actually even happen. And what we have to remember is that we're not our stuff. We're not the things that have happened to us. And even though we may have been victimized by circumstances, you never want to walk around with the consciousness and the identity of being a victim. And being able to make that distinction. It's like, this is something that has happened, but it's not who we are. And we are bigger and greater than the sum total of that. And the last point that he made there is the one that a lot of people don't want to hear, which is about the power of forgiveness. Because we tend to think that forgiveness is something that you do for somebody else, not understanding is that forgiveness is something that you do for yourself. Forgiveness shifts your relationship to the things that have happened, and it prevents you from the toxicity of it. It prevents you from keeping an identity of it and helps you stand in your spiritual power. If you look at any of the great Nobel Peace laureates, they have all been deeply engaged in that thing called forgiveness. It's your ticket to liberation. What I learned after 20-something years of doing prison outreach, and actually in male prisons the whole time, one of the things that they have taught me is that freedom and anger cannot occupy the same space.
Love that.
Yeah,
Love that.
that's powerful.
Powerfully put. And I feel like we could talk about this more, and we'll get an opportunity. But I want to go to the second part first. That second conversation. So conversation number 2 is with my white brothers and sisters. I teach them to be, I'm laughing because I feel like I'm saying this. That's funny. I teach them about compassion. Compassion allows you to see from someone else's point of view. So instead of turning a blind eye to the reality of the situation, you can instead have compassion for everything people of color have been through and are going through. I encourage them to do research and understand the history because this will allow them to gain a new perspective and have a new level of compassion. I'm going to turn this one over to our dear brother, Reverend David Alexander, and just get your input and thoughts on that and whatever you want to add to it.
Well, I think everybody has to come from their perspective, right? So our brother Michael is saying, start with his community and people of color and then move to the next group. And I think for white people, it's the exact opposite, right? We got to start with our people. And we're way behind the timeline here, if you will, because we don't know how to have that conversation. White people do not know how to have the conversation with other white people without being defensive, without being triggered. And so that's where the work is there. If that's the first conversation and there's other conversations after that, white people got a lot of catching up to do, right, to have that first conversation. Because in Michael's example, he said, I teach people of color not to be victimized and not to carry that victim consciousness. So if we flip the script on that, for me, the conversation is to talk with my peers and white identified people and say, you're not superior, right? You're not the norm. Right? You're not the standard bearer for all of life. There are other people, and in fact, you're not white. Right? Your whiteness has been something that you've been conditioned into. And so, while the conversation, black on black, if you will, is about liberation, the white on white conversation is about coming down from a place of superiority. It's about disarming, and it's a conversation that, quite frankly, white people, for the most part, don't have any incentive to have. And that's the difficult part. It's a conversation that needs to happen, but white people don't have any incentive to have it. And so occasionally we get there because we have something like George Floyd, occurs, and their hearts are cracked open. Edmund Pettus Bridge, when the televisions turned on live, white Northerners were moved to tears and said, I can't believe that's happening. Something cracked open in them. And that's what our brother Michael often talks about, being pushed by pain. Being pushed by pain into the conversation. But we can't just keep having pain push us into the conversation, right? White people need to pick up the pace and start being pulled by vision. But what's difficult about that is that on the surface, it doesn't look like there's any incentive to divest myself of my whiteness. So we actually have a tool that we've developed here. We can talk about that more later.
No, please. Go ahead.
Well, so we've been working our justice ministry here for the last year on a paradigm, and we've just released a workbook called 12-Step Recovery Workbook on recovering from the lie of whiteness. And so when our first speaker, when she was talking about, what are you doing? Asking your white peers, what are you doing? And kind of knowing that the answer is nothing. We wanted to develop something where we could say, here's something you can do. Because this work, it's not just reading Cast or whatever new book is out there. And there's some great books, right? There's been a huge explosion of publishing on this. And so there's great book studies to get involved in, and that's all wonderful. But it's more than that. It's the daily work. And so our question was, how do we create something that encourages and invites and creates the space for people to get into the daily work? So I had an insight meditation about a year ago that said, what if we framed this work in terms of the 12 steps? And what if what we were recovering from was the lie of whiteness, to quote James Baldwin? And so we've done that work. We've got a group of people of color together to create the questions and the worksheets, and people can actually workshop themselves through it, either on their own or in 12-step groups with others in their communities, in their spiritual community, etc. Because that's really where it's at. It's one day at a time, one step at a time, realizing that I've been conditioned into a lie. That's the first step, and that I'm powerless over that. It's all up in me, no matter how awakened or spiritual or enlightened I think I am. There's conditioning within me that just is going to pop up, and I have that experience every day, and with my family, and living in Atlanta, etc. So I have to be aware of that. Second, know that I can be restored to wholeness. That there's a which the second and third conversation Michael talked about, coming to that place of wholeness, that we're not our conditioning, etc. Turning my will and my life over to this idea that we are a global community and diverse experiences, making a moral inventory, so on and so forth, all the way through the steps. That every day for the rest of my life, this is my work. One day at a time, one step at a time.
Sign me up.
Yeah, right.
I'm serious. I am ready for that. Thank you.
Would you mind reading the last question?
Glasses.
So this last question, we're going to bring over to our brother in the UK.
Conversation number 3 is a conversation we all have together as a society. This is a conversation about love and compassion and building a kind and just global society. Our society has to be built on love. It's not going to be built on just on the law itself. There has to be a shift in consciousness. Unless in our heart of hearts we can come to the awareness of what love is, and that has nothing to do with the color of skin, and that it has everything to do with who we are as spiritual beings, things won't change. We can only have enlightenment society if people are enlightened, and we can only have a loving society with loving people. There must be a shift in consciousness. This is why agape exists and other spiritual centers exist. So Ade,
Yes.
I know you have some amazing things to share.
What you got, brother?
Well, I just want to say this. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel. Rev D here. I want to say to Rev D, the world is finally catching up with us because this conversation, Rev D is my mentor, my friend, and really got me to a place today where I can have this conversation from a place of confidence, courage, and love. And Reverend David, I see you every now and then doing your stream, and I really am impressed by the work you're doing around having, if you will, uncomfortable conversations, particularly with white people and especially in the spiritual community. And for me, going to the third conversation about that Michael Bernard Beckwith shared is love. It's, for me, actually, now I've sort of like tweaked it a little bit when I talk about matured love. To love individually and collectively and globally, it calls for us to die to the old, to be willing to be vulnerable, to be willing to let my heart break. I often say, love is looking for an outlet. If my heart is encased in fear and judgment and polarization, love will go, oh, that's not an opening. You just find another way. So yes, this love is an inner work, it's an individual work. And as we do it within ourselves, the love itself inspires us to move out, to be an example of what love really looks like. We can't have in the world what we're not willing to become. And I think those of us who believe in love, I think we need to surrender more and allow love to be amplified. I heard something, was it today? I was listening to a podcast. Actually, it was Resma Menachem. He's the author of the book, My Grandmother's Hands. It's a powerful book because he takes this racial conversation into the body and invites the reader to feel what they feel in the body. Can I be with my own pain? Can I be with my own anger? Can I be with rage? And allow love to just guide me. This is deep work. It's messy work. And it's a work that must be done. So you talked about race and consciousness. For me, you can't do consciousness work and not do race. I mean, life is consciousness. And it's the love, I believe, that supports us in navigating this thing called life. Without love, hey, I don't know. I'll say ... Love is the answer. And I'm talking matured love. When you can love somebody, whether you like what they said, what they did, whether they're denying your truth, and still love them. That's deep work. And we all can do it. It's not just for Mandela, Martin Luther King, Rev D, Reverend David. We all have it in us. We just got to choose. We just got to choose to be that outlet for love.
Beautiful, brother. Beautiful. So I love what you said. I love the book you mentioned about reference as well, and that work of being with those things in the body, being with those things stored, because those are often indicators of the consciousness that we are part of and things coming up to be seen. Whether how we deal with them is up to us, but when we bring that presence to it, that acceptance, and then we listen to love to steer us through, some powerful healing can happen. That's what I've been seeing. So let's go back to that first part. We're talking about starting with people of color. The elements he mentioned, I feel like, are universal though. Like those parts of consciousness for people of color when it comes to victimization, resentment, and the need for forgiveness, that's universal. Like we all can relate to that. Humanity can. It just so happens, I love what you said, Reverend Deborah, about the narrative. we know that narrative has been conditioned within our society here on a pretty large scale. But I feel like that opportunity, being universal, we can all speak to what works to heal those things. And I want to come back to you, Reverend David, because I feel like you mentioned something that when it comes to the work you all are doing in those steps, there was this acknowledgement that I may be powerless to undo this narrative on my own per se, and that there is a power to assist in doing it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. That journey from step 1 to step 2, right? The powerlessness is not that I don't have power. It's that sense. It's what's speaking when white people have resistance and they say, "But this isn't my fault," right? My ancestors didn't own slaves, or I didn't this, or I my best friend is, or it's that place from which that comes from, and what's inside of that person when they're saying that and they're defending themselves is I'm powerless over this. You're trying to point some flaw about my condition or my consciousness, but I'm powerless over this. And so we got to start with that acknowledgement. Yeah, I'm powerless over what my ancestors did and the conditioning of 400 years of slavery and everything else. But step 2 is I can be restored to wholeness, right? The beauty of divesting myself of whiteness, the beauty of learning. When my mother, I'm really big into my family genealogy. I got big old maps all over my walls, and I could tell you on and on and on. But for a long time, we didn't know that in my family. And it was I discovered a cousin who had done a bunch, and I picked it up. And anyway,
You didn't know what? I missed that part.
what our genealogy was.
What's your genealogy?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so when my mother asked her mother, my grandmother would respond, and she would, say, "What are we?" And she would say, "A little bit of everything and a whole lot of nothing."
Good answer.
Right? Right? But it was an answer that reflects the divesting of culture that and uniqueness and particularity that white people have done in order to accept this moniker called white. Right? We lose our sense of culture and place because we've come into this norm. So one of the beauties of divesting myself of whiteness is I get my whole self back. I get my wholeness back. I get my Scottish heritage back. I get my French heritage back. I get my German, I get whatever it is, right? And there is a whole lot of things right within me in particular, but I get those things back and I get to rediscover what that is. And I get to be proud of those things, and I get to explore those things, and I get to really understand, as Michael said in the second conversation, the education and the awareness that, white was a thing that was used in the mid 1600s in New England, specifically and particularly because they wanted to ensure that property rights, marriage rights, other rights and privileges were going to the group of people that they wanted it to go to. Because prior to about 1650 in the colonies, the laws said things like marriage, property, and other rights and privileges went to all free Europeans, all Christians, all, free European and Christian were kind of the terms that were used and written into laws. And what they discovered was that, you might be from the north and you might be free, or in the early days, people could work themselves out of indentured servitude, even if they were a person of color, or you could become Christian because the slave owners gave their slaves Christianity. So these terms didn't work anymore. So they needed something that said, well, wait, these people are coming to claim this stuff, but that's not who we meant. We meant this group. And that's when white really became popularized as a racial construct. So I'm not white. White is a false narrative. It's a false social construct. And just as much as we need to free ourselves of the disease of racism, I need to divest myself of that sense of whiteness so that I can claim my wholeness. It's about a journey of wholeness for all of humanity, and we each have our path that we're on.
Beautifully put, brother. I love how you pointed out it's a construct. Because let me tell you, we live in a lot of constructs. Some of them we can free
Constructs make
ourselves
our
of.
reality. And
Yeah.
so we have to examine those constructs and say, do those work? Do those make
Exactly.
sense? Is it producing a world that works for everyone?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then let's change the narrative. Let's change the construct. But people are so, and like I said, our struggle is that often white identified folks don't have an investment. They don't have the
motivation.
The motivation to do it, because why would I do that? I've always been told I'm white. I grew up thinking I'm white. There's nothing wrong with that. Now you're saying there's something wrong with me, and they're not trying to get anything else, right? More rights or privileges or access or anything like that.
What's the benefit?
Right. The norm. They've been the norm and the standard bearer. So the conversation sounds like you're taking something away.
Yes.
Right. So we got to shift the narrative and say, no, I actually want to give you something back. I want to give you your wholeness back. You've actually been living a lie. Right.
Wow. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's powerful, brother. What are your thoughts, baby?
Well, I think I've never even thought about that before.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a concept that I want to learn more about. Like I said, I'm not joking. I do want to take that because it's just conditioned thinking. It's just how I've always been. It's what I've always thought. But can I challenge those beliefs? Am I willing to look at it and say, wow, just because it's what I've always thought, is that serving me? Is that serving all? So I think those are beautiful concepts.
Powerful. So one of the things I noticed recently is I was watching a video, and it was showing a friend on Instagram showing a trip to Ghana, 12-day trip, and he was just showing some video, and I was just noticing and looking at what was going on, and immediately I felt judgment, like with what the scene I was seeing and these thoughts, and I just became aware of them and realized, wow, I have this superiority thing going on. I'm looking at my brothers and sisters in Ghana, and some of them were holding stuff on the head and doing different things, and I just became aware of this judgment of like I'm better somehow. And I immediately felt it. And, I think the emotion I felt really was, I want to let this go. Like it brought tears to my eyes that, oh, wow, I didn't realize like I had. So I bring that up to say, I don't feel as if we are somehow, what you're talking about, the lie of whiteness. I think that same kind of lie can be extended to so many constructs,
Absolutely. But one of the points I like to make in this work is that because it is a false mental construct, it's not limited to light-hued people.
Yeah.
Right. People of color can, we would use the phrase performing to the standard of whiteness, right? Because again, you are encased in a culture that is demanding that of you. In order to be accepted, in order to be popular, in order to, get promoted in the job or whatever. And so you unconsciously, unknowingly adopt the norm to speak, behave, or act in particular ways that are about performing to the standard of the norm, which is a standard of whiteness. And so whiteness is not limited to light-hued people at all.
Love it. So let's talk about the solutions that we're finding that not only relate to race, whether you're black and white, but we saw hate crimes starting to happen in the U.S. with our Asian brothers and sisters. We've seen for a long time the injustices amongst our indigenous American friends. And then we can go out of America and go beyond and see things. But let's look at it from a global perspective of when it comes to race and consciousness, the solutions we're seeing and what works. I want to start with you, Reverend Deborah. Just get your thoughts on that, with all in context of what we've talked about so far.
Well, first off, I would say for anybody listening right now, just take a breath. Just that's one of the first places that we have to start in the healing world. As far as where all of this hits, particularly at such a global issue at such a global level. This construct that we've been talking about, the quote unquote whiteness, is not just about genetics. It's not just a social construct. It's a social, economic, political construct. It is the underpinnings of what we know of as capitalism and how that is playing out around the world. And it's just to say it can't be easily dissected in just a kind of human relation kind of a situation. It has its tentacles sort of everywhere. Now, be that as it may, so much of that has created a standard. And this standard, Reverend David, that you were talking about this whiteness and striving to be close like that, some of it isn't so inadvertent, some of it is really deliberate. And there's a way in which we've set up a particular construct to be the mode and what everybody around the world sort of strives to be, and that giving up of their ethnicity and their pride and their heritage in order to get like the golden coin of the success, as we have defined it in Western sense. That being said, we have to decolonize our minds. We really have to decolonize our minds, that each and every person is not only a spiritual being, living and breathing emanation of God right here and right now. Each and every one of us comes from beautiful heritages. Each and every one of us comes from, no matter how far back you have to go, some kind of indigenous culture, some kind of a wisdom, values about life, about living, about community, about survival, about how you better yourself. And there's a way in sometimes that we exoticize, quote unquote, people of color, and people want to look for their grounding in cultures other than their own. And I believe that part of the healing that we have to do around the world is that we have to dust off the shame. We've got to dust off the guilt. We have to dust off the blame. And we have to be willing to be able to embrace our own ancestors. Our own ancestors, regardless of what they've done or what they haven't done, all of that blood runs through our veins. And if we go back far enough in embracing all of our ancestors, we all come from the same ancestor. You go back far enough, you will see that each and every one of us is related. I find that the biggest question really is, what is our intent? So many people are afraid that if you celebrate the diversity, that's divisiveness. But that's not true. That integration means whole. You bring it all together. When you look around at nature, it expresses itself in this beautiful variety, such as it does with human beings. And if we have the intent to really live in this world, to have a world that's just and that's fair and that is sustainable, there's something within us that's got to rise above the old stories and embrace a new idea of we're actually in this thing together, and that our fates are intertwined, and that I want to be your brother, your sister, not just because it's some nicey good thing to do, but when I'm disconnected to you, I'm disconnected to myself, and I'm disconnected to my God. And that in order for me to be whole, loving you is a part of it. Like Jesus said, biggest commandment, love your Lord, your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and your neighbor as though your neighbor is you. Not the emotional love, but that oneness, whole. We are connected no matter what. And that's what we all need to strive for.
Love it.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Ade, you have anything you want to share on that?
I actually have a question
okay.
for him. In fact,
For Ade.
thank you. Yes, for Ade. She mentioned ancestry. And I know you do some wonderful work with ancestry. So I wanted to see what that brought up for you in this conversation.
It's so powerful. I'm sitting there just cheesing because I was looking for something on my computer. And just as I was looking for it, Rev D started talking about ancestors. I was like, yes. Rev D drummed a liberating truth into my consciousness. And she will often say, the only thing that needs to be healed is a sense of separation. And that has helped me through this journey. So you're talking about ancestral work that I'm doing. I have a program called Representing Our Ancestors, Representing Our Stories. It was actually given to me in what I call a dream vision a year ago after George Floyd was killed and during the protests in America. I now say that I'm a Nigerian man, conceived in Germany, born in UK, and feel more at home in America. It will make sense why I said that in a minute. So having lived in Atlanta for the better part of 25 years, and then being back in the UK, watching the protests, watching George Floyd being killed, it was really a public lynching, and watching that happen, I have such a deep connection to America that my heart broke wide open. And I'm part of an organization called Interplay. So we had an affinity group where the BIPOC community get to be in one group and the white people get to be in another group. And in the BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous people of color, the people were sharing what it was like to live in Atlanta and experiencing everything that was coming up for them. And I remember one of the people in there said, I can't believe we watched that happen and people are protesting. He said, but I have hope. He said, but I'm mad that that's the only thing we have to hold on to. Now, when I heard him, the way he said it, it just pierced my heart. And then other people talked about worrying about their brothers coming home or being in the Uber and wondering if they're going to make it home. And my heart was it was being blended. And I remember that night and I said, Spirit, what can I do? How can I be of service? And this is what came out. This is what came from what I call a dream vision, is to representing our ancestors, representing our stories. So we're not only just talking about what was done, how our ancestors, wherever they are in the world, how they were oppressed. We're also speaking to their love. We're speaking to their vision. We're speaking to their dreams. We're speaking to their prayers. We're speaking to their playfulness. Man, they made love. They laughed. They do things that we're doing today. But oftentimes we talk about the hardest part of what it means to be human, what they went through. So this is a process of acknowledging it all. And as Rev D said earlier, there's some people saying, well, there's some people in my ancestors that I don't want to reconnect with. I don't even want to think about them. Too late. You're a part of them. Because of them, you're here. Some numbers here. If we go back individually, 12 generations, like for me, I have my mom, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and keep going up to 12, go as far as 12 generations. I have 4,096 people that came together. 4,096 people that came together for me to be here. That's just 12 generations. If we go back to 20 generations, it's just a little over a million. For me to be here, for you to be here. So in this room and on the screen, we can count how many people are here. Now multiply that. Just go multiply. So this place is full to overflowing. It's standing room only. So much so that we can't even see the people that are standing. And the more we recognize, remember that We're a part of something greater. Our roots go deep. I mean, it's easy for people to say to me, oh, you're from Nigeria. Your parents are Nigerian, so you know your roots. Not really. I don't even have pictures of my grandparents. Well, on my mother's side, I do. However, if I look at 4,096 people that came together, that passed life onto me, well, maybe they didn't just come. Maybe they all didn't come from Nigeria. Maybe they came from other places that we haven't even considered. Different languages, different cultures, different traditions, different beliefs, different way of looking at the sky and getting messages. And oh my God, if we just think about that. So if there's and for anybody listening, if there's some parts of your ancestors, you know the story and you said, oh, it's just hard for me to embrace that ancestor. Guess what? You are the one to bring the light. You are the one. We're talking about raising consciousness. You're bringing your consciousness to heal what was passed on to you in your DNA. It's in you. It's in you. Sometimes I say it's easy for white people to say, I don't know why they keep talking about race. What's going on? Or sometimes we can't even penetrate their heart, because if your ancestors witness hundreds and thousands of people being lynched, and you stood there and watch with little kids, there's an imprint of that experience that is passed on. So in order to survive, you gotta have to put some protection on the heart. And where we are today, we are breaking open. We are breaking open. I really believe that we are in the middle of something powerful. We represent the world that's ending, and we also are standing for a new world. It's a messy place to be, but it's a privileged place to be as well. We are the ones.
Mm-hmm. Powerful, brother.
Yes.
Beautiful. Did you have something to say? No, go ahead.
Can I just say this? That this is not just about an either or. This healing that needs to take, it's not just like a black versus white or white versus people of color. That the construct of the supremacy, and I don't care whether it's racial supremacy, gender supremacy, national supremacy, religious, it's the concept of the supremacy that is the problem. And this racial supremacist concept about whiteness hurts white people. It doesn't just hurt us as people of color. It hurts white people. And I'm sorry, Reverend David, because I know this is your community and you're living in Atlanta and I'm in California, but I gotta go here. That when you look at what's happening in the nation, the biggest threat now to the nation is not some Islamic terrorists. It's homegrown terrorism. It's homegrown terrorism that is steeped in the white supremacy. When we look at what happened at the insurrection in the Capitol, those were white people coming after other white people there to lynch other white people. When I looked at Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd, I saw two victims. Because whatever it was that happened to Derek Chauvin, to have him lose his humanity so much as to think that he was entitled to do that, that's another lost soul. So this is not just what is the incentive? White people got an incentive right now. Their own souls and this democracy.
Beautiful, beautiful. I know we could probably talk about this more. What I love is the fact that we're doing something about it. The work that you all are doing, work that you shared. And I know when it comes to healing, I've experienced healing from what Reverend Deborah Johnson not only shared today, but in her books. So get those books because they help shift your consciousness and let go of some of these ridiculous conditioned ways of thinking that are limiting our experience of love, limiting our abilities to see one another as equally precious as we all are, equally holy as we all are, and
My brother Ade, I know you are doing powerful work. And what you said today brought me to tears, brother. I'm over here trying to dry my eyes still about the ancestry and just all of that, bro. That's expansive. But I love the work you're doing on your podcast as well. And all of you, Reverend Cynthia Alice as well, what wonderful work she is doing on her podcast and her ministries. So we want to thank you. We want to give you each, just to close, an opportunity to mention where people can go and find out more about the work you're offering. So if we could start with Reverend David, we'll go to Reverend Deborah, and then Ade, and then Kathy's got something for everyone.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for this amazing conversation. It's been great to be with Ade and Rev D, who I'm also Rev D. So every time Ade said it, I was like, my ears perked up because we both go by Rev D for a long time. And so our work can be found at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, slca.com. And specifically, the workbook I mentioned, lieofwhiteness.com. You can order either a PDF for instant download or order a hard copy, paperback copy from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or BookBaby. And sign up for the newsletter there. We're going to have 12-step groups and book study groups starting all over the country. You can start your own. Don't have to wait for us. So that's where that can happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Rev D?
Well, I appreciate so much being on this program, and I hope all of you know in Atlanta you have one of the best there at the helm. I'm always so pleased to be with you, and I love all of you. I love John. I love Kathy. You know, Ade, Cynthia, everybody. You pulled together some really good people. You can find me through my ministry. We're just starting to celebrate 25 years. Woo! I'm the founder. No small feat as an independent New Thought church. Inner Light Ministries. We're the ones in California. There's another bunch that's out on the East Coast, as well as social media. You know, of course, in my website, Deborah L. Johnson. That's the long way. DEBORAH, ljohnson.org. And you can also get autographed copies of some of those books that were being mentioned so beautifully. And I want to say, you know, thank you for those kind words about the book.
Thank you so much, Rev D. Honor to have you here. Ade, my brother, what do you have to say?
Well, I'm just going to step into holy boldness. We talked about the book. It's The Sacred Yes and Your Deepest Intent. That's right. I'm telling you, that book will transform you, and it's not a book you just kind of read. It's a letter from the infinite that just opens you up, and your mind is like, oh, this is too deep for me. I'm out of here. Ego will be like, oh, wake me up when you finish, and transformation will happen. The Sacred Yes and Your Deepest Intent. Well, yeah, for me, lifecoachade.com is my website. Lifecoachade.com. And then for the Representing Our Ancestors, Representing Our Stories is a 3-part series. June 19th, that wasn't planned. It just, well, I didn't plan it. Let me say that. But there was a divine plan to it. It's happening June 19th and it's 1 p.m. Eastern. The link to that page to find out more is bit.ly/represent vision. bit.ly/represent vision. And this part 3, even if you weren't there for the first 2, you can be there for the third one. But really, we're coming together collectively and catching a vision of a new generation. This is a place, the first one was about grief. The second one was telling a new story. So this one is, what kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of world do we want to live in? And also, what kind of world do we want to leave for those who are coming behind us? And we're the ones to create that. There is no future. The future is right here. What we do now is what's going to become of what's to come. So that's June 19th, 2021, of course, and it's bit.ly represent vision /represent vision. And again, Kathy, John, Thank you. I'm like, this is worth staying up for. I stay up late anyway, but I'm with Rev D. I'm with the Rev D squared. Oh, I'll be in the middle. We're Rev Dad. Yeah, let's call it Rev Dad. Rev D, Ade, and Rev David. Thank you.
Thank you for staying up late with us, Ade.
Oh, it was worth it.
My final note would really be the love that I felt through these conversations, the love in your authenticity, in your willingness to be honest for all of us here. I mean, it opened my heart, and I feel like that love piece, if we can come from that love piece. And with that, we happen to have a song that we're going to have to take us out. That's love, that when it came through John, the words were so powerful, and it can transform. Music can transform. What you are sharing is transforming, and I'm just grateful to have you here. And I'd love to take us out with That's Love.
what you learn. That's not the ultimate concern. It's what you choose to think and be. Feel the truth and set you free. That's love. Yeah, that's love. I am loved. Here I am.
Thank you guys so much. Tony, Fuji, John, all of our guests.
Absolutely. We're grateful that everyone could join us for this very first live episode of
Awaken Pillow Talk.
Peace.
If you enjoyed today's show, depending on where you're catching it, please like, share, subscribe, etc., and give us a great review.
To further support our work, please go to the show notes or description and look for the donate link to give.
You'll also see links to join our newsletter and follow us on social media.